Of all the great episodes of PBS Nova, I think my favorite is the one that finally brought the trebuchet into the general American zeitgeist. In the late 90s, Nova set out with a team of engineers, carpenters, and medieval recreation specialists to build what was probably the first full-size trebuchet built since the universal adoption of gunpowder. And when I say full size, I don't mean one of those little things made out of telephone poles. I'm talking about a monster 5 stories tall. And then they start digging into the engineering side of things. They notice that in a lot of the drawings, even though the drawings are nowhere near to scale, quite a few of the trebuchets are displayed having wheels. So they experiment to see why would they have wheels. It turns out that the wheels allow the trebuchet to shift so the counterweight falls in a straight line for a longer period of time, imparting more inertia to the projectile. It also has the effect of dampening the vibrations and preventing the trebuchet from tearing itself apart. Another design feature that can help in the same way is to use a swinging counterweight instead of a fixed counterweight, so it can again drop in a straight line for longer. So they're out there, they build the trebuchet, they're using only historical techniques, no power tools, no nothing, and here's a great explanation of one of the tools that they use.
Now, block and tackle is a fairly simple device. It magnifies your pull. If I were to lift my own body weight with a single rope, I would have to pull down 200 pounds to lift my 200 pounds of body weight up. With this, I'm hooked up to this double sheath pulley, and I've got 4 lines which share the load equally. So 200 pounds here is only 50 pounds on each one of these ropes. So to lift my 200 pounds up, I only have to pull 50 pounds here. Now, mind you, I have to pull 4 times as much rope, but it really works.
Also, I thought this was really cool. Check out this hand-powered flywheel wood lathe. You really need to go watch it because I'm just covering some of the highlights. Now, the next thing they do is just a little range test. They think that the trebuchet probably has to be within about 200 yards to do real damage. 200 yards, just to give you a concept of that, it's 2 football fields minus the end zones or 2 standard city blocks. So in modern terms, this is fairly close. So they're testing to see whether archers could have killed the crew at this range. And we're going to do a different episode about medieval archery. It's really unlikely that medieval archers fired in arcing volleys like that. They were typically probably firing in a straight line. So ordinarily, firing arrows in combat at 200 yards was probably not something that would have happened. Obviously, if they're building a trebuchet, you're going to do what you can. But at that range, all they have to do is build some wooden hoardings, and they're protected from arrows. And after that, they introduce us to the guy who seemingly kicked off this project. This one's really fun to watch.
A quest which eventually led to this piano flinging contraption. A mechanized catapult made from a laminated beam, scrap metal, telephone poles, and steel cable.
Full shoulder down.
I wasn't sure how to fit the grand piano thing into the narrative, so I just stuck it there. So after this, they start talking about the history of the trebuchet. It originated in China, and the very first ones would have been hand-powered, and the Arab engineers started making them larger. One of the funniest things from this, actually, it's not mentioned in the documentary. This actually comes from a Dan Carlin hardcore history. When Genghis Khan stole the idea of the trebuchet from the Chinese as he was slaughtering them, he made his way to Baghdad in his conquest, and when he got there, they had these trebuchets built, but they didn't have any stones to throw because it was just the middle of the desert. So they started chucking full-size palm trees at the walls of Baghdad. I just like that image.
Putting on their kilts for good luck, Wayne's team rushes to get in one final shot.
Come take a look at the rocks over here. It just pulverized the stone on the inside.
There's some decent drama in the episode. They were actually working on 2 different siege engines, and one of them, most of the team had to leave before it was finished. So go check out the episode. There's a lot more depth to it as well. Now, like I said, I do plan on covering medieval archery sometime soon. Specifically, we're going to be looking at bodkins versus medieval plate armor. If you want to learn more about that on your own without having to wait for me, go check out Todd's workshop over on YouTube. They've done some extensive testing, very well documented.